Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 8 of My Hero Academia Season 5. Match 3 conclusion. And while the title seems pretty self-explanatory, I am really excited for this episode because last episode we got a lot of setup with Todoroki, we got a lot of setup with Iida, we've gotten a lot of setup with Class 1B and Class 1A in this match, and it's the start of our top 3 guys because let's be honest, it's Todoroki, Bakugo, and Deku are our top 3 guys in Class 1A. I mean, I love other members of Class 1A just as much, but in terms of the story, it's really these 3 guys, and it's kind of mirroring All Might, Endeavor, and Best Jeanist kind of in a way, because Deku has All Might as his mentor, Shoto, for better or worse, kind of has Endeavor as his mentor, and then Bakugo, we know, has interned with Best Jeanist, who is the number 3 hero. So, I mean, it's kind of a nice parallel there that Horikoshi gives us, but I'm really excited to see how this episode goes down. It should be pretty interesting to see how this match concludes. I think I remember from the manga how it concludes, but I don't remember how we get there, so that'll be interesting to see. And so far this season, even though a lot of people have complained it's had a slow start, I think it's built itself pretty steady. It's been pretty consistent throughout. And there's been times when the animation has been really, really neat. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, we shall see, right? We shall see how it goes. But in any case, 8's my lucky number. And so I'm pretty excited to dive into this episode and see if it holds up to the luck standard there. So, in any case, we're going to dive right in, guys. Once I get done, I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to go catch up where the manga left off at, and then come back and do a non-spoiler discussion and a spoiler discussion as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we're just going to dive right into episode 8 here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my gosh, this episode was so good. Oh, the animation, man, when they decide that they're going to kick it up a notch, they're going to kick it up a notch because Iida and, I mean, the flames, Todoroki's quirk has always been really well animated in the show. Obviously, it's beautiful ice and beautiful fire, and they can make it look gorgeous. But Iida's quirk, I kept getting flashbacks to Endeavor when he's like zooming around the building in episode 25. Like I kept getting images of that, like it's the same animation style. But Iida, oh my gosh, and the turbines and it just getting so hot and doing almost like a rainbow effect. Like it was so good. But so it was a draw, man. Okay. So that's 1 win, 1 victory, and 1 draw. So it's down to Bakugo and Deku and their counterparts. But oh my gosh, I love, again, we're tying in a lot of parallels with Iida and Todoroki, and it's not so much family this time, but it's kind of their role as a hero. And there were also parallels to TetsuTetsu and Iida, which I thought was really, really interesting. So poor Shoto, he is so tied to his past, and I like that Horikoshi makes it keep bringing up, because it's not something that just is going to go away. It's not something that's that ingrained in, and Shoto admits, he's like, it's ingrained in me based on my father's abuse that I don't want to use fire, and I don't want to start with fire, so that's why I always start with ice. It's habit. But from this battle, Shoto has seen that's not always going to be a good option, because like Hananuki told him, he's like, if you'd started out with fire, I wouldn't have been able to make things soft, and that would have affected the entire battle. And so if you just started out using the most effective strategy instead of the one you were most comfortable with, then it would have changed the whole outcome of the battle. So I'm assuming that Shoto from this battle is going to get instilled in him that I may have to not bite the bullet, but I may have to develop my fire quirk that I didn't want to if I'm going to be an effective hero. If I'm going to be as good of a hero as I can be to help people, I'm going to have to make this fire power my own, forget my father, forget his legacy, all that stuff, and just make it Shoto's ability and be able to do that and use it in the future to be helpful. And so I like that Shoto has gotten a situation where, because back when Iida and him were facing Stain, back in the tournaments, everything else, he was kind of able to skirt around that for different reasons, but this battle, he directly is confronting the fact that, nah, you've got to develop that firepower and your resistance and use of it, because I get the distinct impression, based on the last episode too, that Endeavor was talking about Toya, and talking about Toya having a weak constitution, and being like, Ray's body is weak to fire. I get the impression from this that, and this is even going back to episode 25 in season 4, that Ray, her genetic ice quirk, is also very weak to fire. Because Natsu and Fuyumi both seem to have ice quirks, and they both comment that they don't like hot weather. They don't like the heat. They can't stand it. Which is very metaphorical in how they don't like Endeavor because of all the stuff he's done to their family. But physically, they don't like fire. And so we've established that Toya also had a very big weakness to fire. And so Shoto, even though he has both fire and ice quirks, he clearly hasn't built up his body to have as much resistance to the fire as perhaps like Endeavor. Endeavor can overheat, but his tolerance for fire is great. Like, he can withstand a lot before he starts to overheat himself. And Shoto isn't at that point yet. Even though he has the ice quirk that can cool him down, he needs to build up more resistance to that fire. So I can see him wanting to do that as a training technique, but also figuring out, in what strategy do I need to start out with fire, and what strategy can I start out with ice. So I'm hoping that it is implied in this episode that Shoto may have to indirectly find a way to work with his father to do something, because it keeps flashing back to his dad, and Endeavor's methods of getting Shoto to try to work with his fire quirk are not good. Like, you shouldn't punch a 5-year-old in the gut and tell him to get better. Like, that's not gonna work. But Endeavor is problematic. And so I'm wondering how that's going to work with Shoto. It seems like Shoto's like, I'm gonna have to develop this fire quirk, and I'm gonna be curious how he goes about doing that. But with Iida, I love the idea that Iida is like a rescuer. Like, Iida's whole thing about stopping villains is that we've talked about with All Might and Deku and Bakugo the concept of fighting villains to save people, and fighting to save and saving to win. Like, what is it? Fighting to win and saving to win. Like, there's two different sides of that. And Deku is more of a saving to win person, and Bakugo is more of a fighting to win person. But in this case, Iida is very much a saving to win person, and Shoto is a fighting to win person. So it's a nice parallel to Bakugo and Deku there. And Iida's all about, like, I can use my speed to rescue people and then go back and face the villains. Like, he's like, I know I'm that fast and I can do that. Whereas Shoto is not fast, so he's like, I can fight and hold the villains off while Iida, you do all of these other things that you need to. And I really like that. And I also like that Ojiro and Shoji get a lot of focus in this fight too, because on the surface, when you compare it to Iida and Shoto's amazing quirks, Ojiro and Shoji on the surface, you're like, oh cool, Shoji can grow multiple arms and Ojiro has a tail. What do we do with those quirks? But honestly, when they work together, it's very effective, because Shoji has the ability to see around him and has all this peripheral vision, and he can use those arms to kind of fend off attacks, and he is a strong person. And the same thing with Ojiro. Ojiro has his martial arts skills and his like nimbleness and things that he can move around very quickly. And so I like that this battle showcased that even though their quirks aren't flashy and super OP, they're still very effective quirks that can be lent to making them good heroes. And I really, really like that. And the same with Gyrate and Pony. I know that Vlad called Gyrate his quirk. I know he called him, is it Kuwabara? Or I forget his name, or Kaibara. They call him the MVP. Pony is the MVP of this, Vlad. I'm sorry, but she is the one that made this a draw. And gave Shoji and Ojiro a run for their money with her cannon horns. Like, girl's quirk, same thing. It's the same thing. Her quirk isn't that spectacular, but it's a very effective work. When the horns were flying around, it reminded me a lot of Hawks. Like, her horns are kind of sentient. So it kind of reminded me of Hawks' quirk, where you could lift people up and carry them just like the feathers do. So I think that's a cool parallel, too, that her quirk, it's kind of like Hawk said. He's like, I don't have the strength for you to feel secure with me fighting a villain, but I'm efficient enough and quick enough and effective enough that I can get the job done. And I think Pony's the same way. I think it'd be cool what if Pony had job shadowed with Hawks? That'd be kind of cool. She can't fly, but she can kind of use the horns to fly. So that would have been cool. Come on, Horikoshi, where's our Pony Hawks team up? But she's so sweet, and I love her character. And when she breaks into English, like, it's so adorable. But yeah, girls MVP of this match. Her and Iida were the MVPs for sure. And the whole parallel thing ties also to TetsuTetsu. Because TetsuTetsu says the exact same thing Iida does. Iida is like, when he put Kaibara in jail, Kaibara was like, well, this is just a practice match. And Iida's like, no, it's not. Because Iida's been in real battles. He's been in that battle with Stain when Native's health was on the line and his brother's honor was on the line. He's like, I've been in a real fight with a real villain, even though Stain is an anti-hero. He's not really a villain. He's a vigilante, pretty much. But he's like, I've been in a real battle, and I know what that feels like. And he's like, if I'm going to train, I have to treat this like the real thing. And that's so heartbreaking when Kaibara's like, oh, you're just a stick in the mud. And Iida's like, I know people tell me that. It's like, oh... Because Iida's personality is very, he's always the stoic class rep. He's the professional one. And his personality can come across as him being professional and being kind of, simple and stoic. And Iida being self-aware, being like, I know that people think I'm just a stick in the mud, but that's just who I am. It's like, oh, like my heart hurt for Iida for a little bit. I was like, oh, dude, no, I just want to give him a hug. But TetsuTetsu also says the same thing. He's like, I treat this practice match like a real thing. And TetsuTetsu I love that Kirishima gets the line, like, I need to follow his example. Because TetsuTetsu is doing what Kirishima should do, technically. He is going directly into the fight. And his quirk, the steel quirk, the real steel, it's actually a really good quirk. It's not just makes him strong and, invulnerable to direct attacks, but the fact that he can absorb heat. I loved the callback to him sitting in an oven, practicing absorbing all that heat, because it kind of calls back to season 3 when Aizawa was making Shoto dip his hands in the hot water. I know a lot of people were like, oh, that's kind of like a metaphor of him when he got his scar. Like, isn't that bringing back those memories? But the idea is like to help condition him to withstand heat, because even though he has a fire quirk and has some natural resistance, it's the idea of making that stronger. And so that was a cool callback to season 3, that kind of training, and showing TetsuTetsu going through his own version of it. And the idea of his like body turning red from all the heat, and then eventually Shoto keeps turning up the heat. And that moment when his eye, like, Shoto has like a side to him that's very Endeavor-like. Like, when he gets really mad, he is similar to Endeavor, but he doesn't go full all the way. But I like that parallel of treating this fight seriously. And the whole thing of collateral damage is very odd in this episode, in this matchup specifically, because Hananuki's quirk is very odd, because it makes things soft and pliable and changes their shape, but then it goes back to normal, I'm assuming, when he goes unconscious. So that's really interesting as well. And Hananuki, dude, like, his whole thing of being like, if I fall unconscious, it's going to ruin everything, and just staying awake and using his quirk. I love at the end that we have them in the hospital with Recovery Girl, and I like that Ojiro's already ate his Snickers and left his calorie bar, and I like that both TetsuTetsu and Hananuki go up to Shoto and Iida, and they're like, hey guys, good matchup, let's do this again sometime. And it's like, oh, that camaraderie with Class 1A and Class 1B I really like, because I know a lot of people have said in the comments for on Crunchyroll and everywhere else, there's not a ranking, it's not a tracking thing. Like, I'm from the US, so usually if I think of Class 1A and Class 1B, it's natural, I think, if you're from a Western mindset, to think that Class 1A is the academically better class and Class 1B is lesser, because A and then B, it's like that tracking system, which I hate, but that is natural to assume. But in the manga, Horikoshi establishes that A and B are just arbitrary letters and numbers. They don't matter. The classes were put together at random. All of the students are on equal footing. They just happened to get placed in Class 1A and Class 1B, which, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense. Because, I'm sorry, but if you're going to tell me that TetsuTetsu made it into Class 1B and was less of a talent than Mineta, what? I'm like, that doesn't quite add up. So it makes total sense that it's just random placement and it just happened to be class 1A and class B. It's like class blue, class red. The numbers and letters are arbitrary. They don't matter. It's just how they were placed. Because then you have Todoroki and Momo were your recommendations for class 1A, and this Takage and, oh gosh, who was it from the other group? They were the recommended ones. Was it Kurohiro or was it Hananuki? One of them, they were the recommended students for that class. So it makes sense that you had your 4 recommended students, 2 went into class 1A and 2 went into class 1B. Makes sense. And then your class 1C is your general course. So that all makes sense. And hopefully Shinso moves up into either A or B based on how he does in the other match he has. Monoma keeps getting worse and worse. I don't know if you've seen Slam Dunk or have read Slam Dunk. I've just finished the manga and now I'm watching the anime. But the coach for Ryonin, Teoka, there's a point in the manga where during the battle, during one of the Ryonin matches, he's the coach and his facial expressions get more and more exaggerated and more insane. And it's hilarious. And that's all I could think about in this episode with Monoma is that he just gets more and more animated and worse as time goes on. And I love that Class 1B is like, yeah, he just has fits. It just happens. You just gotta deal with it. It's fine. I absolutely love it. But yeah, the animation was top tier. The match was so good. I thought Class 1A was going to lose this match, honestly. I really thought they were going to lose it for some reason. And it was a draw. So I'm like, okay, that puts pressure on Bakugo and Deku's matches then, because whoever wins that is going to put the class ahead, and then the next one's either going to tie up the classes or one class is going to win. So it's either this whole thing's going to end in a tie or one class is going to win the overall thing. So I don't know. Bakugo's the same thing as Monoma. He just gets worse and worse, and now that it's his turn, it's like he's stored up all this energy and is just like a burning inferno, and it's like, oh my god, Bakugo. Oh guys. Yeah. I'm excited for his match, but I'm also like, dude, I know what you're going to try to do. You're going to be like, I don't need any of you squabs, because his normal friends aren't on his team. Kirishima and Kaminari are off to the sidelines, and those are usually his like go-to tag team partners. So he's stuck with Jiro. He's stuck with Jiro, Sero, and who's the other one in the match with them? It's Bakugo, Jiro, Sero, and oh my gosh. There's one more with all of them. I'm going to have to think about it. Who is the 4th person? My mind has gone blank. But it's not who he usually teams up with. So I'm really curious, like, Bakugo, how we do in this? It's not going to go... Okay, it's not Ochako. Is it Mina? No, Mina, Ochako, Mineta, and Deku are on a team together. Who is with Bakugo in them? I'm sure you guys will comment below and I'll go back and rewatch the episode and figure it out again. I can't believe I can't think of who it is. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for Bakugo's battle, but I know Bakugo, I just picture Midnight and All Might and Aizawa being like, please stop. please don't destroy everything, if you don't mind. But yeah, this was a great conclusion to this episode. For being so self-titled at the start, it concluded very, very well, and had a lot of surprises in it that even though I've read the manga, I hadn't gone back and reread it yet, so seeing that I was like, oh, that's cool. Nice. But yeah. So, in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction. I've got a couple spoilery things to talk about, but in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week with episode 9 of Season 5, My Hero Academia. Shia! Oh, spoilers! Spoilers. I honestly, y'all, I thought that Class 1A lost this match. I really did. I had convinced I kept remembering the panel in my head of Iida being trapped and Shoto lying in front of him. Like, I distinctly remember that panel being stuck in my head. And we got to that point, and I was like, oh, wait. I was like, they're all unconscious, but there's only one in each jail, so how do we do this? And then I forgot it was a draw. So there was that. Man. there are a lot of foreshadowing elements in this episode. A lot of foreshadowing. And when you go back and reread, you're like, man, Horikoshi, you are foreshadowing quite a bit in subtle little ways. So the pace did pick up with this episode. We've been doing like 2 chapters per episode this whole season. And in this episode, we did 3. But nothing was left out. It was a lot of action shots. And I've noticed that when Horikoshi, the chapters will go by faster when there's a lot of action shots, because Horikoshi wants to show off that animation and show off that drawing and illustrations in the chapter. So there'll be those double spreads. There'll be those different like panels where it's just action shots. And so that makes a lot of sense that we did chapters 204, 205, and 206 in this episode. So I'm guessing that as we keep going, we're going to pick up the pace. And someone noted in the comments for the last episode, they said that they saw some promotional material for the Endeavor Agency part for season 5. And I was like, oh, well, that's after Redestro gives Shigaraki the army. So are we going to end with ending? Which would be interesting. I need to go back for next episode. I need to go back and read, because I had calculated it out that if we did 2 chapters per episode, the season would end with Redestro giving Shigaraki his army, which I think would be a good ending to the season. But I also think that that is a bit cliffhangery to wait a year on. And so maybe I could see them doing the whole ending part as the final episode, because the ending part shows Endeavor's agency with Shoto, Deku, and Bakugo working for Endeavor, which would tie back to a lot of things that we're setting up in this episode. Shoto realizing that, yeah, I need to work with my father to gain a better control of my power. I don't like my father. I know what he's done in the past, but he is my father. He knows this quirk. If I'm going to get stronger, I'm going to have to find a way to work with him, whether I like it or not. And so I think that would make sense that you would end on, we started out with Keeping Up with the Todorokis this season. It would make sense that we end on it. And we've been bringing Toya up, so it would make sense that we end with that. I don't know if that's doing too much. I need to go back and see, like, if we do 3 chapters an episode, where does that put us at? Because once we get to My Villain Academia, there's a lot of action and a lot of fast-paced chapters. So maybe I could see that all working out. I need to do some math on that, because I feel like the last few episodes of season 4 did rush a bit to try to cram in Endeavor's, which, granted, it was a great episode. If you hadn't read the manga, you'd be like, oh my god, this is amazing. But if you read the manga, you're like, well, what about Dabi? What about this part? And then we had to wait until season 5 to get to it. So maybe, in hindsight, it would be a good idea to do the ending part in this season, because it ties back to everything Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto have been learning throughout the Class 1A, Class 1B matches. It would tie back to those very nicely. So, I could see that. We'll see. I'll do the math before episode 9 and let you all know how that shakes out. But I could see them doing it. I just don't want them to rush. I know a lot of people have been like, don't rush through My Villain Academia. And I don't think that they will. I think they're going to have like 15 episodes to work with My Villain and ending. I think they can do it. But I need to go back and count those chapters and see where we're at. But yeah, Shoto, foreshadowing of him working with Endeavor. Foreshadowing of, God, Bakugo. What I remember of Bakugo's fight is that he wants to do things on his own, but he ends up helping his team, but it's in a very Bakugo way, where it's very tsundere indirect, where he's like, yeah, I kind of helped you, I guess. It's like, I do remember him helping Jiro specifically, and that's all I remember, is that he helped her specifically because she was the one most concerned about him. Maybe it's Sugar Rush. Sugar Rush, that's the one I was thinking of. Sugar Rush is in their team. That's who it is. Good. I was like, that was going to drive me crazy. Sugar Rush is in their team. I was like, who's the 4th member? So, yeah, sorry those of you that didn't watch the spoiler corner. I'll have to comment on that next episode. But Takage, they build her up in this, and yeah, she's cool. Her quirk is that she can disassemble her body and is kind of like a snake. It's fine. I don't ever remember being wowed by her quirk. And so when they build her up as a class recommendation, I mean, Shoto and Momo, it makes sense. Their quirks are very, very OP and very, very talented and powerful. And then if it's Hananuki was the recommendation, one of the other ones, it was like, okay, that makes sense. But with her, she's sneaky and she's slithery like a snake. But I'm like, is she really that? I feel like Horikoshi hypes her up, and then we don't see her do. I distinctly remember in the manga being like, okay, with her. So I'm curious. I don't remember much of this fight other than Bakugo and Jiro having a moment. That's all I remember. So that'll be interesting to go back. But this whole thing of Shoto not being as strong or being able to withstand fire as much as he likes, it's tying to Toya. It's tying to... And the thing of it is, I was thinking about this during the episode, is that when we get to Dabi versus Geddon, Dabi has a natural resistance to ice, and so he's very strong against ice. And we see Getten using that ice against him, and Dabi's like, what up? And so all I could think about was like, Shoto's natural instinct is to use ice. So if Shoto ever went up against Dabi, his natural reflex would be to use ice. But with Dabi, that's not what you should do. You should use fire because Dabi is weak against it. And even though Dabi's quirk is fire, he's weak against it. So it was such a cool moment in the episode being like, oh yeah, if Shoto ever faces Dabi, which it's kind of been flirted with in the manga, and it sort of almost happens, and then Dabi pieces out, and it's like, But it's like, this is a moment where Horikoshi is kind of subtly telling us, the audience, that Shoto, down the road, if he faces someone that fire would be effective against, and he has that choice, he needs to make that choice and start out with fire if he's going to win the fight. And it's like, ooh, because Dabi's his brother, and so if you're facing your brother, you have a natural instinct that you maybe don't want to hurt them. So I could see Shoto starting out with ice and that being a mistake because Dabi's resistant to it. So, like, nice, subtle foreshadowing. TetsuTetsu this episode, I get so much respect for TetsuTetsu because he just doesn't give up. He's like, oh, I can endure more than you. And, dude, OP, man. Him, Iida, and Shoto. The animation on Iida was so good this episode. I loved it. A lot of people get kind of nervous with this studio and animation because they want to see them go all out, but this studio is smart. When they want to go all out with the animation, they do. And when they conserve it, they conserve it. And I'm fine with that. There's no reason to go insane with animation on mushrooms. I'm sorry. Komori's ability does not need to be overly animated. It's just mushrooms. You can get a little generic with that. That's fine. It does give me hope seeing the animation with these matches, that when we get to My Villain Academia and we get to Twice's moments, when we get to Toga's moments, and especially when we get to Redestro versus Shigaraki, I'm hoping they've saved their budget for that, because Redestro versus Shigaraki and just laying waste to that town, I'm ready for it, y'all. I'm so ready. I keep saying that. Y'all don't understand. My Villain Academia, for those of us that have read the manga, My Villain Academia is so cool. And Shigaraki's backstory, like all of it, it's very good. So I'm glad that we have episodes like this today, though, that keep the show going on a nice, steady pace. If this season has been anything, it has been consistent. And I am okay with that. If a show is consistently good, more power to you. Because, like, you know, for example, this last core with Haikyuu that came out this last fall, there were amazing episodes, but there were some episodes that you were like, I don't know. And then this season's been consistent, so I'm like, okay, good. So I'm excited to see where it goes to from here, guys. But man, good episode. 8's my lucky number, and this one did it justice. So next time we get to see Bakugo and Early Bird. I'm guessing like Early Bird gets the worm, maybe. Like, if we need to fight fast and start out. Because someone commented this, too, in one of the previous episodes. They're like, Class 1A has been reacting to a lot of attacks, and Class 1B has been doing the initial attack. So Class 1B has been consistently doing the initial attack, and Class 1A has been reacting. And so I see with Bakugo's group that not being the case. Bakugo's like, we ain't waiting for them to attack us. We're going to go gung-ho straight in. So early bird gets the worm. Like, let's attack early and make the first impression. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen, but we shall see. So, in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings, and I hope that you guys come back next week because we're getting into Bakugo and Deku's matches, and if they're as good as this episode, it's going to be fun. So, have a safe week, take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to y'all again soon.